This is Atalanta Moonfire and another episode of Atalanta's Run. And today we have a guest, Mike Grimes, who is going to be speaking to us about Tantra. Now, when I looked it up, the definition of Tantra is the adherence to the doctrines or principles of the Tantras involving mantras. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, meditation, yoga, and ritual. So that's a whole mouthful of words that I am just not sure what that means. Can you, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then maybe let's get into explaining what this is.
No problem. Yeah, so I'm 42 years old, born and raised in Atlanta. Um, Grew up in the Christian faith, but I would say around early 30s, I started to really challenge some of the beliefs that I had been brought up with. Um, and what really sparked that interest was I was at home watching TV, and then I saw a episode or a commercial about a veterinarian who was doing Reiki on animals. And so how I am, something that sparks my interest, I'll start researching. And so I started looking up Reiki, and I was like, man, that's really cool. And I was like, man, I really love to learn it. And at that particular time, of course, depending on how much or how deep you are into a certain religion, anything outside of what is taught in that book, whether it's the Bible, the Quran, or some of the Jewish books, is considered not appropriate. But I googled it, researched it, found a Reiki teacher, and I said, this is not a religion. It's just a energetic practice of using certain energies to heal the body. I said, I don't see how any organized religion will have an issue with this. So started the path of Reiki, and then as I was doing Reiki, I started doing Reiki shares where me and my teacher and a group of students, we would do healing on different people, ranging from illnesses, from cancer to emotional illnesses, and just overall health and healing. And so at one of the Reiki shares, a guy came up to me. He said, have you ever heard of Tantra? And I said, I've heard of it. I said, but I never really gave it any thought. I said, and at that time, my definition or my understanding of it was based on how it had been projected in the media in terms of, overly sexualized. And so he was like, there's a guy who's teaching it, and he's really good. He said, I want you to think about coming out to a couple of classes and just seeing what it's all about. And so I was like, okay, I'll check it out. You know what I mean? And so that led the journey into my exposure to Tantra, which, like I say, I know we'll talk about it. Studying that and his system and how Master Yao taught Tantra led me to reframe how I thought about things and reframe how I viewed things, and put me on the path of a more of an esoteric or a Gnostic mindset, which then led me to Masonry, led me to Rosicrucian, led me to interest in witchcraft, African spirituality, Ifa, hoodoo, voodoo, and those type of systems. So that really, if I hadn't got into Reiki, I wouldn't have met the gentleman who put me in link with Master Yao, who introduced me to Tantra. And then, that sparked, like I say, just opening up my whole mind and my whole way of thinking of things to be more open to more things of an esoteric nature outside of quote unquote organized religion.
How many years, this process that you went through, like how many years did it take for you to go from point A to point B?
I'd say 12 years, because I started right around 30. That shift when you're going from 29 to 30, and then I would actually probably say maybe probably around 28. And the reason why I say that is because, of course, with other systems, that they call it the 7-year cycles, where every 7 years, certain things about a person, depending on where you're at in life, starts to shift and change. From birth to 7, 7 to 14, 14 to 21, 21 to 28, and then so on and so forth. And you can kind of see it sometimes where, as you get older, when you reach certain age, certain things start to change. Certain things become important to you, certain things are not important to you. You start to maybe question things that you may not have questioned years before. You start looking at not so much maybe death, but okay, I'm at a certain point where I know that clock is ticking in terms of me being on this earth in this particular body, in this realm. And so I would probably say 28, because that is the time I officially stopped being a Christian altogether. Like, I didn't go to any more meetings or anything like that. I kind of really left it behind. So I would say 28, and the way I view things, 42 now, so I'm still on that journey, still learning. So I would say,
Yeah, I think we're all on journeys that we're constantly learning. You mentioned something about the media and I guess sexualizing Tantra. That is what my understanding is of it as well. I mean, that's my limit right there. That's all I know. I think that's most people's understanding or knowledge on it. So hopefully tonight we're going to learn exactly what it is. And you're going to open our eyes. So.
And that was my initial thought about it when the gentleman approached me, at the Reiki healing session. He was like, when you say, hey, you ever thought about Tantra? And like I said, from my point of view, that was my viewpoint of it as well. And I was like, man, I don't know, like, I don't know if this dude trying to get me into some freaky stuff or, you know what I mean? So, so knowing how I am, I immediately went into research mode, and I tried, I was researching Tantra, and I was researching Master Yao, who, I was trying to get as much information as I could. And so the information I came upon, you know how it is, until you start doing something, you don't know what's right, what's wrong, what's accurate, what's not accurate. You know what I mean? So I said, all right, I'll give it a try. I'll come to his tier 1 level, and I'll see how it goes. And from that point on, I actually learned what Tantra is and what it's not. And so what I like, usually when I first introduce people to Tantra, I usually have to spend a couple minutes dispelling all the myths. But I do want people to understand, don't get it wrong. Tantra, Reiki is a healing system using energy. Tantra is a healing system as well, but it uses sexual energy for the purpose of healing. But with that being said, Tantra also incorporates practices that are non-sexual as well. But it's a complete system. Certain practitioners can choose to focus on certain aspects of Tantra, and other practitioners can choose to focus on other aspects of it. When I first got introduced to it through Master Yao, what Master Yao did, because he went and studied Tantra from different cultures for years on different continents, he took certain aspects of certain Tantra systems and came up with what he called active Tantra, or Tantra that could be more applicable to society today. And I know you and I've talked before, it's similar to, like, you and I talked about, throwing the bones, how no one can really pinpoint where it originated, just that different cultures use that system as far as throwing bones.
Right.
Similar to Tantra, and what I believe is that Amongst certain civilizations, there are certain people or priests or wise men and women, I believe, that receive certain downloads from universal intelligence, because Native Americans have their own Tantra system. You have a Tantra system of Kemet or Egypt. The Khmer civilization has a Tantra system. And for those who don't know, Khmer would be considered modern day Cambodia area. And then, of course, most people get their first quote unquote taste of Tantra through that famous book, the Kama Sutra, you know, which is kind of like the Hindu, expression or version of Tantra. And then, then you have the yogic traditions. So Master Yao, he took a little bit of all of those systems and just kind of came up with his system of Grand Trine. And then, of course, you got Tibetan Tantra. And what I try to get people to understand, you have even His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, 14, he's written books on Tantra. So Tantra in itself involves meditation. It involves the use of mantras, like you quoted earlier, mandalas, sacred symbols. It involves, a proper diet, drinking the right water, grounding yourself, even certain qigong or yogi exercises, depending on, like I said, because in the Tibetan tradition, certain exercises would be qigong, whereas in the yogic traditions, certain exercises would be what we see now as yoga. So it's a whole system. Then you also have the sexual aspect of it. But here's where it gets conflated. Like I tell a lot of women, any man can touch you in a certain area and it feels good. That's not Tantra. The purpose of Tantra in the system is using the sexual energy to heal the body. Whether I'm trying to heal a woman who's suffered from past trauma, whether it's sexual abuse, or whether it's stress from maybe how she was raised in maybe certain societal conditions. And so, like I said, it's a complete system. I would actually say, in my opinion, the sexual aspect is maybe 20% of it. Because if not practiced right, when you get down to the sexual practices, whether you're doing table work on someone, or if you are fortunate enough to have a partner where both of you guys are practicing Tantra, and when you do engage in certain sexual activities, that flow of energy is cycling between one another, healing through, the genitals, then you're not practicing Tantra.
There's I don't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to just kind of let you know a little it's similar to sex magic, except for, I don't know if you've heard of sex magic, but in witchcraft, you can practice sex magic either solitaire or with a partner or with multiple partners, but it's all about the energy that's created to manifest what it is that you want. And it is a ritualistic act. I mean, yes, there's pleasure in it, but anyway, so I just wanted to throw that in there because that is something that, I mean, it sounds to me like, okay, I've already practiced something similar to this, maybe there's other people out there that, by you giving us this information, they will get the same result, the same thoughts. So the sexual part, is that in all like traditions of it, or is that just one particular area, or how does that fit in exactly?
Yeah, so each tradition, whether you're talking about the Hindu yogic Tantra or the Native American Tantra or Tibetan Tantra, all of them, they do have a sexual aspect of it. And it's interesting that you said that, because I've often sometimes have been asked, well, isn't Tantra sex magic? And for the most part, you can honestly say, yeah, it is a form of sex magic. But I always tell them the difference is it's a form of sex magic with a different purpose or different intention.
Exactly. Yeah, because sex magic is for anything you want to manifest, whereas I guess Tantra is for healing purposes.
Right, right.
So only.
And what I tell people, because you and I talk, just with any practice that involves energy, you have to protect yourself. You
Hmm.
know, whether you are practicing with someone that's maybe you're not married to, or maybe that is not your partner, in order for that energy exchange and that healing to take place, you have to be comfortable with that person. That person has to be comfortable with you. There has to be a level of respect. There has to be a level of you willing to open your energy up and entrusting that person to your energy. And like you've always preached, there also has to be a level of you protecting yourself in your energy whenever you are involving Tantra and practicing Tantra, not by yourself.
You're vulnerable.
Me, you're vulnerable. Now, me, I've done both. Now, unfortunately, my wife, she's just not into those things. But I have practiced Tantra with individuals who um, have sought healing. And so when I've gotten to the point where we're actually doing table work, um, it's all about that comfort level. Because what some people don't understand, Tantra can be fully effective and fully healing, and you don't have to, the person or the people that you're working with, you don't have to be sexually involved with one another. It is using the sexual organs as far as certain energies to produce the healing. But in terms of, some people have in their mind that, okay, I'm going to have a Tantra session. So the healers, they're going to whip out the Kama Sutra book, and it's all about these, weird positions and everything. That's not it. In true essence, really, because you and I've talked about this, and even, at the basis and core of Tantra, it's using, in combination with the system, is really about using sexual energy to really elevate and improve your energy.
Yeah, sexual energy is the highest form of energy.
Right.
That point of orgasm is the highest level of energy you can possibly reach.
Right. And the ancients, they knew that. And
Yep.
they knew that in order to achieve that, you have to, and that's why I tell people, that's why it's not all about the physical. Because even with Tantra, and even with, like certain things we talk about, you're dealing with three bodies essentially. We as what we are now, we're made up of three bodies. Your energy body, your physical body, and your spirit body. Tantra is the process you're working on all three. Because one, you can't heal one or work on one without the other. I can't use the sexual energy to heal myself physically if energetically I have blockages in my quote unquote chakras. That's why with the certain traditions, especially the non-sexual part of Tantra, they really get heavy into the meditation, the mantras, certain exercises, because
So
you need to work on energy body as well.
Can you clear your chakras? Okay, with Reiki, you clear chakras, and can you do that with Tantra? I mean, are there exercises to do that, or do you have to know Reiki to be able to clear yourself to practice Tantra?
No, and actually, there's been situations where I don't agree with, where people have tried to combine both practices. And I'm like, you can't, I ain't saying you can't, but it's using two separate energies. And that's where it comes into, like when you ask, can Tantra be practiced solo? Absolutely. Because like I say, a lot of Tantra, especially in certain traditions, it's about working on yourself. If I'm not at the highest version that I can be, how am I going to come and try to work with someone and try to heal them if I'm not working on myself? Just like
Right.
Reiki, well, you and I are Reiki masters. You can do self practice, Reiki healing on yourself. Same with Tantra. And so, where a lot of people kind of miss it because society sometimes, some intentional, some non-intentional, due to, everybody wants to put a marketing spin on something. Everybody knows sex sells. And so in that, certain people kind of miss the true value of it, because in Tantra, regardless of which tradition you gravitate toward, whether
Hmm.
it's the Tibetan, the Khmer, the Kemetic, or the Native American, um, and you're not talking about it, a lot of this stuff is really nothing new under the sun. Just the fact that in the small time we've been talking, you and me, like, oh, based on what you described about Tantra, I'm kind of doing it already.
Right. Just didn't know it.
Yeah, yeah, just to know it. Um, and so when I am teaching Tantra, I mean, we get deep because, like I say, it's a whole system. So we get into the chakras, we get into the reflexology zones, we get into certain meridians. How does certain energies move within the body when it pertains to systems or organs that deal with pleasure? Part of pleasure is the seeing. So we're dealing with the reflexology zones of the eyes. You know, you got, part of pleasure is hearing. You know, definitely the reflexology with your hands, the touching.
It's all
You
the
know,
senses.
yeah, all the senses that deal with pleasure in a sense. And so, really, like I say, when you really get down to Tantra and the complete system, the sexual aspects of it and the non-sexual, it's essentially what it's trying to do through the meditations, the diet, the mantras, the sacred symbols, or mandalas, in addition to the exercises, whether you are using certain exercises solo or whether you're using certain exercises with a partner, is really trying to elevate you and heal you to deity-like status, how you were meant to be at the time you were born. That's why you will see it, especially with Master Yao's system, certain things he pulled. So we got into the I Ching. We got into some of the deities as far as Kemet. He pulled a lot of concepts, like I say, from the Native Americans. He pulled a lot of concepts from the Tibetan because we got into certain qigong exercises.
So he's eclectic, like an eclectic witch.
Right, right. And I will say some of his former students, they may say, well, he really wasn't teaching Tantra. And I would say what he taught was, I would say, he took certain aspects of Tantra from different systems to make it uh, more applicable to Western society.
Makes sense.
Which
More acceptable.
more acceptable. So I mean, if you're a Tantra purist, could you say he was teaching Tantra? Not 100% in the
Hmm.
sense of maybe, like I say, some of the teachers of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, like I say, who's written books on Tantra. I got certain books from Chinese monks who've written on Tantra, Tibetan Buddhist monks who've written on Tantra. So um, like I say, what he did, he just kind of took the practical approach. And how I like to frame it when like people we sort of get in those discussions, um, and what I try to say, in my opinion, what Tantra is not. Um, okay, I give them an example. Bruce Lee learned from one of probably the most famous, well-skilled martial artists of Wing Chun, Yip Man. Yip Man had a lineage that he learned from. So Bruce Lee, studying under the feet of a master through time, he developed his system called Jeet Kune Do. But he was qualified and understood and knew enough and sat at the feet of a master where he was able to come up with his own system based off Wing Chun. So I look at it similar when it comes to people who maybe take certain things and they may, in essence, and the thing that Bruce Lee, what he did, once he came up with a system, he didn't call it Wing Chun, he called it Jeet Kune Do.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm trying to compare that to students or people who are interested and they're confused by all the noise going on, okay, what's Tantra? What's real Tantra? Is this person what they're teaching? Is it real Tantra, or is it a marketing gimmick, or are they just trying to spin it? I always tell them, who do they study up under? That person they study up under, who do they study up under? They themselves, how long have they been studying? And are they qualified to do similarly to what Bruce Lee did, where, okay, they've studied up under masters of Tantra and they have a complete understanding of the system to where they can modify it and adapt it to today's or the civilization that we're in today.
That makes sense.
The issue that you see, and you even see it in witchcraft, I call it the MMAs of spirituality. Where the MMA fighter, they learn certain martial arts for a little bit to
Yep.
kind of like be well-rounded.
They use everything.
Right.
That's what eclectic witches do. And I'm gonna tell you something. There's a lot of witches that considered eclectic witches just not witches, taboo. And the reason why is because they didn't say, Norse tradition, if you're Norse, you're studying Norse, you have to stick with Norse, and that's the way it goes, and you can't do anything else, and blah blah blah. And or Celtic, same thing like that. Hoodoo, same thing like that. Whereas, with eclectic witches, we study a certain tradition, we take what we want out of it, apply it, to our life and to what society is today. It's just like, I want to tell you, it's just like whenever I learned to read the bones, I learned a traditional way that was taught down through a family. And then I took it and put my modern spin on it. And that's what I teach. Right. So yes, I know, I know the bones. It's, and it's personal with everybody. Everybody kind of makes it their own. It's the same thing. And with Tantra, it sounds like it's comparable to those,
Right. But the difference between somebody like you versus some of these people who are only surface deep with it. They, I sometimes, and the reason why I drew that MMA analogy is because what has caused a lot of confusion about what Tantra is and what it's not is somebody, they may have seen a YouTube video, read a book, maybe taken a class either in person or through or online from someone who learned it the same way that they're teaching it, and they haven't really studied it like you have. And now all of a sudden they're qualified to, I know enough about it where I can come up with my own system.
Right.
And you're like, that's no, that's not
No,
really
you
how it
can't.
works. You're right.
No,
Whereas
you
somebody
can't.
like Whereas somebody like you, and that's what Master Yao did, you guys have studied, like you said, eclectic, that's how, so that's what Matt, he went and studied with certain gurus and sages, you know, to where he just pulled from different tantric traditions. Um, and just like you say, kind of made it applicable.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, people, they do what they want, but this is kind of the same way you see with a lot of anything dealing with spirituality, where, and some of it's intentional, some of it's not. But the danger I see in that, especially with Tantra, is, how it was that first time where you felt like you got exposed to a whole new world. You felt like Neo out of the Matrix. When your eyes were quote unquote open.
Right.
At that particular time, you know how it is. Depending on who you first come in contact with, you're not at that point. You're not only vulnerable spiritually, but you're vulnerable in other ways, because your eyes have been opened, but you don't know what you don't know. So people, if they approach or dress themselves in a certain way, you don't know any better, they can start leading you down the wrong path. Because
Right.
they see that you're open, they see that okay, this individual's new to this whole new world of energy, spirit, higher consciousness, and that's how people can start to get taken advantage of.
Happens in
And
witchcraft all the time.
right, which, like you say, that's how now we have where people really don't know or understand what Tantra is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always tell them, you have to be careful, because, like I say, you have some intentional, unintentional, where it's just the world we live in. People want to market, so they want to market it. So let me let me see how I can put a spin on it, so I can market it and sell it. Whereas some people, they're not coming at it from that angle. Because the society now, everything's quick microwave. They before they fully understand and really learn and get into it, they want to rush and think that they can go out and teach and show others.
They get a little
And
taste of it and they're like, oh, okay, I can do this.
yeah.
I can do this. This is easy.
Yeah. Which, if they, like you say, and this is how you know when someone has really, really done the research, and how, like I tell people who are new into certain things, people you come across, they kind of, how we say, they kind of confirm certain things in a way where that person's genuine, or that they know what they're talking about. And one of the biggest examples was just on this call today. You immediately drew the comparison between Tantra and sex magic and certain things that you already practice now. And so, say I was talking to someone and I was trying to explain to them what Tantra is and what Tantra is about. And say they were a student, they didn't know, but they were a student of yours. They'd be like, okay, well, what he's talking about, man, it sounds like, what I'm learning from Lisa. So, I don't know him, but, the cross reference point is they kind of checking one another.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's been the biggest thing for me on my journey is the genuality. When it's genuine in that person or the individual, they kind of really know. there'll be other people in spiritual communities and even in different systems that'll confirm certain things. Because if prime example, if I'm doing tantra work on someone and I'm really getting into it with them as far as the system, the meditation, the mantras, I give them I pull their Bhagavad chart. I give them a reading. I do energy table work on them. And I say, okay, well, based on your Bhagavad, these are certain cycles. This is how you should move and how you should act. And hey, while I was doing table work on you, I noticed certain blockages in certain areas. And then say they come and they're like, okay, all right, sounds good. And then say they go have a reading with you, whether it's a traditional reading or say a reading of the bones. And you were like, hey, you know, I sense this going on with you. I sense that going on with you. Boom, the light bulb goes off because they just had a table session with Mike in Tantra. And he said, okay, based on what's going on, certain things manifest, especially in women in their reproductive areas, the ovaries. But if they have certain things going on in life, I'm noticing their throat chakra is a little off because in women, based on what's going on, sometimes, you know, that's why they run into thyroid issues. And then they're like, oh man, well, Mike, totally different system. I just had a tantric session with Mike dealing with sexual energy. He noticed certain blockages and certain things going on in my body. And my body responds that way based on what's going on. And I just had a reading with Miss Lisa, whether it was a bone reading or another type of reading. And she just kind of confirmed what was confirmed with me on the table, energy work. And that's kind of how I tell people, you know, you're in the right arena and you know
Right.
you're dealing with the right people.
I have a question.
Yes.
It's a side note, okay? Side note, and then we'll jump back to that. First of all, Tantra, is that something you live every day? And the second question is, okay, if you don't have your reproductive organs, like for instance, if you've had a hysterectomy, are you still able to practice Tantra? Or, I mean, that might be a stupid question, but I'm thinking that the energy flowing through you, that do you need those organs to practice?
No, you don't. And I've actually had when I was practicing Tantra doing table work, just based on certain things that that I know, I could tell women that were having issues in that area and how it manifested, and a lot of them winded up having to have hysterectomies because they didn't continue with Tantra.
So is it an everyday practice? I mean, like you live the lifestyle, or is it something that, like with Reiki, for example, you can live a lifestyle of Reiki. I Reiki my food. I do all, but I mean, you can also just practice Reiki whenever you feel like it. So is Tantra, that kind of a practice, or is it something you live, because you talked about diet, certain exercises, this kind of thing? Is this something that you live every day, that you commit to, and it changes your lifestyle? Or is it something you just practice, like fast before? You know what I'm talking about?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Certain aspects of it I incorporate daily, such as the meditations. There are certain type of meditations that you can do that focus on sexual energy. I'll be honest with you, those I don't do as much as I used to. Even with Reiki, I find myself sometimes, getting out of sync with it. Because to be honest, I really stopped practicing Tantra probably about 3 or 4 years ago.
Mhm.
Just because I saw the new wave. It was just how Reiki, you experienced how Reiki got real hot and real popular.
Mm-hmm.
it
I
was the
did.
new, yeah, it was the new sexy.
It
Tantra
was the
kind of,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
It was the
Tantra kind of,
thing.
yeah, Tantra kind of got that way, and so I just found myself just constantly trying to educate people on what it's not. I'm at a point where, honestly, especially when it comes to like the physical uh, aspect of it, when I'm dealing with someone else, I really just do it by word of mouth. But in terms, because like we said in the beginning, you can practice it with someone and solo.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the solo practices, I still do. I don't do it on a consistent basis like I should, but I still, I still try to, incorporate it some form of way, in my life.
Can you practice with multiple, like in sex magic, you can, sex magic is actually any ritual that involves sex that, manifests a certain energy that you want to come to fruition, blah, blah, blah. So you can have multiple partners in sex magic. Is it the same way in Tantra that you can have multiple partners or no?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. You can have multiple partners in the sense of, and like I say, it all depends on how far you and the individual that you are practicing with want to go. If
Right.
you just want to go as far as the table work, and even in the table work, you have table work where it can be touch or it can be non-touch. And then you can get as far and as deep into it as, where everything is, the intimacy part as well. And that can be done with multiple partners. And even if it's multiple partners, like I say, that, it could be where some of them are committed relationships, some of them are not. Because, like I said, you have some where their spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend, even outside of Tantra, are just not of a certain mindset. So whether it's Reiki, Tantra, whatever, that's just not their path. So, yeah, it's really up to the practitioner. But yeah, very similar, like you said, as far as sex magic. You have to have multiple partners at various levels, and even those partners, they themselves can have different relationship status. You might have some tantric partners where it's no touch table work. They might be. I've always, in all the circles that I've been in, whether it's Reiki or that, I've always been known as the person that's really good at grounding. But yeah, so you have some where they're comfortable with no touch table work. You have some that are comfortable with touch table work. Some that are comfortable where the table work is fully nude. And then you have some where it's not. And then, like you said, you have some where it's the whole thing.
Right.
And like I say, whether it's the man or the woman, she might have a set of guys, and like I say, those individual guys, they could be their relationships could be at various levels, but some of those guys, they know, okay, with him, I'm only going as far as the tantric work. This person, I'm not.
So communication is important.
Right. And then, like you said, it's all about whether it's the man or woman who you trust your energy with.
Right. Now, trust would have to be a big factor, I think, in that. It
Yeah.
is. I mean, because you're literally opening yourself up to you're susceptible to anything. And I've been in situations where I allowed myself, my energy to be open. I I was young and dumb and trusted people and went into a ritual just trusting my coven mates, and I ended up getting an attachment that I took home with me that attacked me physically. And it's because I didn't protect myself before going in, because I was like, oh, this is my coven. I had just started with that coven, and I'm like, oh, this is my coven. Okay, they're gonna love me. They're not gonna do anything to harm me. And yeah. So you have to protect yourself, I guess, and you have to have that level of trust.
Yeah, especially
You're
and unfortunately, just the way society is, the woman, she has to have that level of trust where, regardless of the conditions of the table work, when things do get to a certain point, and things get aroused, and you start orgasm or whatever, that there's that level of trust that your male partner who's doing the healing, he doesn't see that as an opportunity to maybe take the session somewhere where you don't want to intend it to go. But because, like I say, you're in the moment, you're aroused, your orgasm, he has the credibility and the willpower to keep it focused on the healing, regardless of what's going on. Even the integrity where it might be at a point she might want you to go there.
mm-hmm.
But okay, under normal circumstances, not really. But just because of the nature of things in the environment, that's what she thinks her body needs at that moment.
At that time, yeah.
Yeah, the completeness. But so that's really, like you say, communication. Communication
And self-control. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly.
Self-control, because yeah, you can
Now,
I can imagine being in that situation, being in the heat of the moment, saying yes to, okay, I want to go further. But like you said, normally, she may not want to go further. And the guy has to trust, or she has to trust that the guy's going to be like, okay, in a normal situation, this wouldn't happen. So he's got to have willpower, he's got to have that self-control, which goes back to the trust thing. So
yeah, especially when he's just as aroused as you are on the table.
Right. All right. How do you control that? Oh my gosh.
But like you say, if the guy, or even if both walk in that the intention is on healing, then everything is okay. Or like you said, communication, all of the parameters have been established. So even that part of it is okay, just as long as everything's been established up front. And that's why, like I said, that's really, especially when you're getting into that realm of Tantra, whatever the conditions, all the conditions should be stated up front before any table work. That way, regardless of what's going on during the table session, all the parameters were established up front before it started.
Right.
So
the limits were established.
Yeah, so if you know that those limits were established beforehand, regardless of now that things are at a certain level, regardless of what she's saying, she was at a certain state of mind before the session started. So that's what you need to go off of, regardless of what she's saying now. And same if it was the woman healer and the guy was on the table.
Okay, I was going to ask you that if it's vice versa.
Always, yes, definitely, always.
So okay, if you don't reach orgasm, does the healing still happen?
Yes.
Okay.
And see, that's the part where people who really want to practice it have to really understand, like I say, 10% of it is the sexual aspect and the table work, because essentially you're trying to move energy.
Mhm.
You're trying to move energy through the body. If your water intake is not at a certain level, and the quality of water, which talks about cell absorption, energy can't move and penetrate you on a certain level. If your diet's not at a certain point, hell, if your mindset is not even at a certain point, and you know how we all do, you get to certain states of consciousness and a certain vibration through meditation, through mantras.
Mhm.
All of that plays a part on not only because in Tantra, and they talk about it, there's different levels of orgasm.
Well, with women, I know there are different levels. There's different types of orgasms. There's different levels of orgasm. I don't know about with men, but
same with men too.
There can be, but most guys don't think that way.
Right. And see, in Tantra, and it's taught, ejaculation doesn't equal orgasm.
Okay, I knew that part. I knew that part, and I knew that there's something about refraining to reach a certain level.
Yeah, so you get into semen retention and all that stuff. But for the guys with Tantra who really practice Tantra, you really want your orgasm to come from the prostate. So that's what I'm saying. It's Tantra, the system. How's your prostate health? What are you doing to maintain your prostate?
Mm-hmm.
Because guys and men, they can have whole body orgasms as well.
They don't realize that though. Most guys that I used to have a job where I interviewed men a lot, and it was like on a sexual nature, and I'll just say I was a dancer. And so there was a lot of guys that they just wanted to talk. Almost every guy I've ever met, I mean, there's probably, I can count on one hand the men that I've met that realize what you just said. And if you try to talk to them about it, if you're dating somebody, you try to talk to them about it and be like, there's different levels of orgasm you can have. You can be more satisfied if you, experience these. They don't care. They don't care. They don't care. And of course, women can be just as bad about it. Women think, all right, there's only two types of orgasm. Actually, most women think there's one type of orgasm. Some think that there's two, but there's different types and different levels. You can have an orgasm you can have an orgasm in your mind, and a lot of people don't realize that. So, and that's, I don't know, I think one of the things you're talking about, there's just different levels of reaching that point, if you even reach that point. But that's what I was wondering, if you never reach, any kind of level of orgasm, is the Tantra still healing you? Is it like if you get in and you're, uncomfortable for whatever reason, you're nervous, okay, your first time and you're nervous and you're like, okay, I can't, there's no way that I'm going to, especially women, it takes a lot sometimes for them to have an orgasm, and it doesn't happen, the healing still happens, correct?
Right. And so I've had times where before she even got to that state, we may have had to do 5 hour and a half table sessions, where the first 2, I'm just clearing out block energy. I'm trying to connect the heart and the root chakra together.
And build the trust.
Yeah, because like you said, and that's why there's certain parts of the table where we're working on the crown, because like you said, a lot of it starts in here, your head. So it may take 1 or 2 table sessions just to get the energy flowing throughout the body. But also, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, that's why I tell people it's 20% of that. Because if I do a table session with you and I'm giving you certain meditations that you need to do, maybe certain diet advice or whatnot, you know, if you don't follow that, then when you come back, we're starting over.
Yeah, there's
You know,
you didn't do the homework.
right? And some of it, to be honest with you, what I found is you got a toxic partner in your life. So until that part is gone, however you want to get rid of that part, we're just wasting time.
Mm-hmm.
You
Going through
know,
the motions.
yeah. Even if say some like, because I've had some where they were really into yoga, or they were really into certain spiritual systems. Some that were into witchcraft. So from an energetic standpoint, they were already pretty open. So we can get there on the table for the first or second session.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the true healing never really took place, even though they may have orgasm, because they weren't doing the work off the table.
Yeah, you have to do the work. And that's where a
Yeah.
lot of people fail in anything. You talk about comparing it to witchcraft. Oh my goodness, I can't even tell you. Everybody wants to be a witch, and that's the new fad, by the way. Everybody
Yeah.
wants to be a witch, and then when you get them in there and you say, "Okay, I need you to read this or practice this," well, that's not what I want to do. I want somebody to fall in love with me, and I want money, and I'm just like, it gives me a headache. So I have to really, weed out the ones that I think are serious from the ones that aren't. And I would imagine with Tantra, it's the same thing, because you probably have people that go in there going, "Oh, I'm going to go have sex with lots of women or lots of men." Or, you know what I mean? I'm going to go have sex with
Right.
all these
Right.
people, and
Right.
this is what I'm going to do. And so you got to weed them
Yeah.
out.
And I tell people all
to.
the time, hey, it's 2021. You can do that and don't have to label it Tantra. You grown.
All you got to do is get on a dating app. I swear to you.
Yeah.
That's all you got to do. I have friends that do the dating apps, and I'm just like, I shake my head. I'm recently single, but you know what? I will not go on a dating app. There is no way. Yeah, you're right. It's the same. You don't have to label it.
That's the other thing I saw, which is why I kind of stopped really. People were calling the Tantra as an excuse to just have orgies.
Right.
And the way I think, just go have an orgy.
Yeah, just go have an orgy. That's the same thing with sex magic. Oh my God, because with sex magic, everybody's like, "Oh yeah, we're just gonna go have an orgy." Well, just go have one.
Right.
What's the problem? I don't understand. Just go have one. Why do you have to ruin what's happening, what people are trying to practice? Why do you have to do that? But yeah, you're right.
So honestly, nowadays, even when people find out that I practice or have practiced and they're really interested, I honestly start from the non-sexual aspects of it.
Yeah, I guess you would have to.
Whether I'm pulling from whether I'm pulling some knowledge from my Tibetan books, or from some other books I have, they would probably think it's not even Tantra. Because when I stay like, man, I thought you were talking about like this is Tantra. It's part of it.
It's a big part of it.
I'm teaching, meditations. I'm teaching the importance of sound healing, frequency healing. And some of the things that I was even looking at, the thing about discussing, before we got on, even with Tantra, even with some of the traditions, you use mandalas. And like you said, to circle back to what you made the point earlier, is that sometimes a lot of people in certain secret societies or certain spiritual practices, they are practicing a form of Tantra anyway. It's just the part that's not really dealing with the sexual aspect. Mm-hmm. What do I mean? Okay, in Tibetan, they call it mandalas. Haitian voodoo is fevés. Certain magical or practice like witchcraft, which I call it sigils.
Sigils.
In Palo Mayombe, they call it firmas. All designed to do the same thing.
Just different names.
just different names. Which goes back to, like I tell people, there's really not really a whole lot new under the sun. So a lot of times, like I say, nowadays, when I even get into the discussion of Tantra, I'm not even talking about any sexual aspects of it. Because
But
in
that
my
is an
opinion,
important part of it, right? That is an important, the
it
healing.
is.
The healing
It
is
is.
is your goal. Am I
But
correct?
right. But in my opinion, from my experience, I found that people get the best results when they're ready for the physical aspects of it,
Hmm.
if they have really studied and really incorporated the non-sexual aspects of it.
Yeah, I think that that would make sense.
Because think about it, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, like I said, he's written several books on Tantra. Now, I don't know what he's doing up there in Tibet. I don't think he up there, getting busy like that. I could be wrong, you know what I mean? Or some of the Tibetan monks who, like you say, they practice in seclusion. They're monks. They're in certain temples. They're doing tantric practices, but they're no way in no shape or form touching the sexual physical aspect of it in terms of with someone of the opposite sex.
I think you would have
So
to have the knowledge, if anything. I mean, you would want to know why you're doing things, and like you said, you have to know how to meditate. You have to, maybe yoga is an important part of it. You have to eat clean, drink clean, just all these different things. To get the result, I would think you would have to know all that stuff and be trained in all that stuff, and it just makes
Right.
sense. That just makes sense to me.
And if you think about it, just like with a lot of spiritual practice, if you go back to certain times in certain, like say certain Native American tribes or certain societies, not everybody was doing that in terms of the person doing the healing. In a village or you may have had one or two Tantra practitioners that were doing the healing. They weren't even really teaching everybody. And just like you and I talked about with a lot of the traditions, even those that were privileged enough to get taught, it was years of the process. It was years. And there was a lot of the stuff was passed down. Now, don't get me wrong, thankful for technology things today because it allows people access who really want to use certain things in a good way to be able to do it without necessarily having to seek out or find maybe that one or two individuals in an area that, you know what I mean? But
So can you be self-taught? I mean, we keep comparing it to witchcraft, but that's because that's what I know. In witchcraft, you can be self-taught and practice solitaire. Some witches look down on that and say, no, you can't. But you can. I mean, with Tantra, through like studying everything you get your hands on, and I mean, like you said, we have the internet now, and I mean, can you be self-taught? It's probably not best to be self-taught, I would think, but is that a possibility?
I would say yes. Like you said, with the way things are now, with the wealth of information, with the books, you can be self-taught. However, depending on what lineage or system of Tantra you're practicing, there are always certain things or certain techniques that maybe you only learn or get to learn through initiation.
I think, yeah, initiation. I think the guidance is important. Having somebody to guide you. You know, like I said, in witchcraft, you can practice solitaire, but you're sort of just jumping out there blindly, picking up different pieces of information that you don't know if it's true or not. And if you have somebody that's sort of guiding you a little bit, you're going to get there faster where you want to be. And you
I
know, you're
guess
going to build that trust.
if I had to answer that question, I would say if you'd ask me a question, I would say, sure, Lisa, you definitely could. But I would be saying yes to you based on your background, the things that you already have practiced and have studied, and you have a certain understanding. For somebody maybe who's just had the veil uncovered on their eyes as far as this world when it comes to energy work, spirituality, I probably would say no.
Depends on the person.
Depends on the person, because like you say, you're at a stage where you don't know what's credible and accurate information.
Right. That's why I wouldn't want to go and try to do it myself. I mean, like you said that you think that I probably could. I wouldn't want to do it. I would want to have somebody guide me through it, because I'm thinking that, there's a whole lot of false information out there, and rather than sift through all that, and yeah, I would want to have somebody.
I would say for you, well, I would say yes, because you have the knowledge in the background where even if you're reading, because like you said, just because it's in a book don't mean it's accurate or authentic.
Right.
I would say somebody like you, like I said, based on your experience, you would have the intuition where whether you're reading it in a book or from a website or maybe somebody's course, you might be like, oh,
that doesn't sit right.
Yeah.
Something's wrong with that picture.
Yeah. Like I may not understand Tantra, but I understand how energy works.
Right.
And I understand the chakras, and I understand how energy moves, and what you just said
doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Whereas somebody who's new to it all, chakras, meditations, all that, I would say no. Because
that makes sense.
You have no way of fact checking.
Mm-hmm. Or comparing.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So, okay, what do you need as far as tools? Like, are there certain to get started? I mean, I'm assuming it's good to have, what would you call a teacher? What is that called? The person that trains you.
It's good to have a Tantra. Some people call them masters or practitioners.
That's what I was wondering.
It's good to have one. I would say to get started.
Mm-hmm.
And how I would tell somebody to get started, focus on the non-sexual aspects of it first.
Right.
Learn about meditations. Learn about the chakras, the reflexology zones. I'm not saying you got to go out there and get a degree in acupuncture or Chinese medicine, but kind of educate yourself on like I say, on frequencies, energy, meditation, what foods affect what, water, different types of water, structured water, you know what I mean, alkaline water. Hell, start learning more about your body.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Really get to know yourself.
Because through that, then you'll start to get at a certain mindset where, okay, I know what's causing me certain types of stress or certain illnesses. I know that when I'm stressed, I tend to have flare-ups on certain parts of my body, or I'm having thyroid issues because my body's responding to maybe I'm in a toxic relationship. Really start getting to learn and work on yourself. Mm-hmm. And then once you get that aspect really going, then you can start working on, because even when you're working on yourself, there'll be some sexual solo exercises that you can do. And for certain people, that may be enough for them. And then for some that really need energy work and table work done, that part requires you that's always going to require someone else.
Mhm.
So even with Tantra, when you're embracing everything, there's certain things that you can do to get started without someone. I don't recommend it if you're just new to certain things in general. But if you're not, somebody like you, there's certain things you can do to go ahead and kind of get started in the art of Tantra. And
So what do you do?
then,
Like, you just put an ad in the paper and say, look, I'm looking for a Tantra partner. I mean, how do you find, is there a club? I mean, how do you find a partner?
see, that's the thing. Is like you and I was talking, like you just said, everybody wants to be rich nowadays. You go in Google search bar, you put in Tantra, you'll be pulling up all types of groups, people who practice it. And some of the stuff sounds real nice, such and such institute of tantric, all that stuff. I would say, to be honest with you, the best way and the best tool is word of mouth. And then once you get the word of mouth, then you go check that individual. And the reason why I say that, and to be honest with you, certain things will come into alignment. How I got initiated in E4 was through word of mouth.
And when you manifest something, it comes. Like when you're putting that energy out there, it comes to you. You'll find somebody, I think.
Well, my cousin's girlfriend, who we call her brother sister, when she left and moved back to Sweden, and I was just learning about witchcraft, I said, man, I really need to find someone. Yeah, I could Google it, and maybe there's a coven that has a website, but I don't know. There's a spot in Stone Mountain I used to go to. Just on the energy, I could tell there was some women in there that dabbled, but like you said, I'm so new to it. I didn't know they were YouTube witches or whatever. You know what I mean? But
YouTube witches.
I put it out there. A certain individual hit me up one day, excited. He was like, "Yo, I was at this spot, and I met this individual. Yada 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 yada." I put it out there, and
it comes to you.
I linked up with you.
Well, yeah, I hope you stay. I hope you stay with us
that's
too.
The best way. Yeah, you got interested into it. I mentioned something, so yeah. So you said, "Oh man, I don't know much about it, but you know what I mean."
I do. And I'll tell you something.
I know some credible people.
You're gonna always learn too, like with witchcraft, and I imagine Tantra's the same way. You're always learning stuff. That's why, like, my newbies that come to classes and stuff, I'm like, you get to teach a class, because guess what? You know something that we don't know, and you need to share that something, and it's all an exchange of energy. I would imagine with Tantra, it's the same thing. You've got, like you said, the credible people and so on, but you've got people like say, for instance, me. I want to learn Tantra. I think I told you that before. I was very interested in it. I didn't know exactly what it was, but for some reason it keeps popping up in my life, and I don't know why. So it's kind of calling me. And then boom, here you are. But I think that meeting like in a group, like you said, you probably need to meet a couple of times, check them out, word of mouth. But it's really hard to find people for Tantra, though. It's hard to find. I think that, like I said, manifesting it's probably the best way, and then checking up on them, like you said, word of mouth. But it's hard to find, a master or a teacher that's sincere.
And I'll tell, for those who are listening that may have, like, if you meet someone and they claim that they practice it, and they're not heavy into meditation, I'm not saying that they are a former Tibetan monk, but they don't even know about Tibetan Tantra or Kaima Tantra, or they don't know anything about the non-sexual part of it, the philosophical part of it, you know, run the other way.
Quick.
Because if you meet them and all they first start talking about is sex and orgasms and bliss and all that stuff, run the other way. Because those type of people, either they know better and they're just using the word tantra because you know what, that sounds more appealing to a woman than, hey, I just want to have sex with you. You know what I'm saying? So that may be they use it as they know, but they know all of the stuff I'm talking about, but they're just choosing to use it as a ploy to get women. Or you have some that they don't know any of the other stuff because of who they learned from. That person didn't know. And so all they were taught was the sexual aspect. And to be honest with you, got some, because I just, when I first started studying the Master Yao, I walked into class. I'm like, the sexual stuff y'all talking about, I ain't interested. Where's the knowledge? I'm trying to elevate. I'm trying to raise my vibration, my consciousness. All that other stuff is cool, but that's not why I'm here.
Right.
You know what I mean? If I want to just have sex with beautiful women, I can do that without paying you X amount of dollars for this course.
Yeah, you're wasting a lot of money.
Right.
Like I said, there's dating apps for that.
Right. And so, and this is why, like I said, I was telling people, you really understand what it is, because me taking and studying Tantra through Master Yao, that experience really changed because by that time I was already a Reiki master.
Mm-hmm.
But how he taught Tantra, like I say, that really opened my eyes to other things. I became interested in African spirituality. I became interested in other secret societies. I became interested in witchcraft, Palo, because if he had taught it strictly from the sexual aspect of it, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Right.
That's how I got into meditation. That's how I learned 1,000 Hands Buddha meditation from some ladies that went and studied from some folks over there in China. So it got me into a lot of things, and actually it served its purpose. I was able to raise my kundalini, my vibration, approach higher consciousness. So now I'm able to look at other systems and other things on another level.
Right. That's true.
And I think it's helped me physically as well. Because, I don't know, when people meet me and they see me, they like, man, they're like, how old are you? I'm like, I'm 42. Like, oh man, we thought you were XYZ. Like, no, I'm not old, but I'm 42.
I just had a birthday. I don't even I'm going backwards now, I decided.
Yeah, I'm aging backwards, yeah.
I'm going backwards. So
if
you take care of if you take care of yourself mentally and spiritually, it is amazing what it does for you physically, because there are a lot of people, when they find out that I'm 52, they get shocked sometimes. Of course, if I had my sleep, but I gotta have my sleep. But yeah, they get shocked. And the thing is if I'm having a bad spiritual week, if I'm just in a funk, you can tell physically on me that, by looking at me, that something's wrong. And I mean, I look older. If I'm having, normally, my moods and my spiritualism is way up here. I just try to every day I practice. So, you know, I keep it pretty high. So most of the time my energy is positive, but I would think and I can perform very powerful magic that way. I think the same thing with Tantra. If if you're healthy and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, the results of Tantra, it's going to be much more incredible than if you just started off with the sexual part. You understand what I'm
Right.
saying? You get the knowledge to
Exactly.
back it up, and then you have the sexual part. It makes it that much better and that much more healing. Without that knowledge, how are you going to know what the healing is? How are you going to know that? So, yeah. Well, is there
Yeah.
anything
Like
that you
one.
is there anything that you might want to add? Like, I think you covered it. You gave me a whole new outlook on it. So that's fantastic. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that are going to be like, wow, um, this is amazing. And maybe people that are going to want to start practicing it again for the right reasons. Is there anything that you want to add?
Yeah. I would tell those that are interested in Tantra, really start with the non-sexual part of the practice.
Get the information.
There's a host of books from credible sources, like say His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He's written books on Tantra. I have several other books written from monks from other Buddhist lineages on Tantra. I have books on Native American Tantra. Start there. Once you start there, then you can work your way into if you choose to, the sexual aspect of it with whomever you choose.
Or by yourself. You can't
Once
find
again,
someone.
the fact that by yourself. Yeah, even how you're sitting, a lot of people understand in tantric practice, sitting with your some people call it the lotus position, sitting there
Right.
with your spine erect. That's part of tantra. Your spine has to be a certain way so that it lines up with your chakras and your root chakra, so that kundalini energy can rise.
Makes sense.
So yeah, it's a beautiful system once practiced correctly. And to your point at the early start of the broadcast, once you learn about it the right way, like you immediately said, oh, I'm kind of doing it already.
Just different reason, I guess, at the end. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. That's just like when I first practiced sex magic, it was always by myself. I didn't realize that I had actually practiced it with other people until I did a podcast on it and learned exactly what it was. Now, I had practiced sex magic, and I had learned about it, but I didn't realize that there's different forms of it. There's different ways to practice it. You can have multiple partners. You can have, you can just watch something that's sexual, etc. And I guess with Tantra, it's the same way. You have to get the knowledge behind it, is what I'm saying, and then practice it. And even when you're practicing it, you're going to learn something new, because that's what I did. I learned something new when I did that podcast, something completely different, something completely new. And with Tantra, you never really stop learning. You're always kind of moving in that direction. Is that right?
Correct. Exactly. Always learning.
Gotcha.
Like I haven't done a table session in 5-6 years.
Well, you need to get back into it. It sounds like
and that's me doing a session on someone else. It's been longer since I've received a table session. Due to various reasons, but yeah, it's like I say, just the fact that I haven't been able to do one or receive one doesn't stop the effectiveness of Tantra when done right.
Gotcha. Well, I'm going to say thank you for coming on this show and enlightening us, because I know I learned a whole lot, and it makes me very interested in learning some more. I'm sure there's a lot of listeners out there that feel the same way, and reiterate the fact is study the non-sexual aspect first. So thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, you're definitely welcome. Definitely welcome. And yeah, anytime on another broadcast, want to get deeper into it, just hey.
Yeah, we'll do a follow-up. We'll do this as Tantra 101, and then I'll have Tantra 102.